A message appeared on my screen from someone who had just been diagnosed with neurosarcoidosis. They were frightened. Then they told me that listening to me speak had made them feel calmer, but they were terrified that this meant the end. I read that sentence again.
And then I sat very still.
It's a body rebounds where the truth gets told about medical mysteries and growing old with a little dark humor and a whole lot of grit. When his body throws a tantrum, he rolls with it.
Welcome to A Body Rebels. I'm Tate. This podcast shares my personal experiences and is not medical advice. Please speak with your own provider before making medical decisions. The voice you're hearing is AI because illness makes speaking difficult, but the writing, memories, opinions, and experiences are mine. Today I'm talking about how one frightened listener's message made me examine my own relationship with illness, mortality, and the life I still have in front of me. I know what it feels like to receive a diagnosis containing a word you've barely heard before. Sarcoidosis, neurosarcoidosis, cardiac sarcoidosis, pulmonary sarcoidosis. The words may be different, but they can all create the same physical response. Your stomach drops, your shoulders tighten. You hear the doctor speaking, but your mind is already several rooms ahead, opening doors you didn't ask it to open. What does this mean? How bad is it? What happens next? Am I going to die? That last question may never be spoken aloud, but it can be the loudest one in the room. When this listener told me that my voice had made them feel calmer, I felt deeply moved. I also felt a sense of responsibility, because calm shouldn't come from pretending that serious illness is harmless. I would never tell someone that everything will definitely be fine. I can't know that. No one can. What I can offer is the perspective of someone who has lived inside medical uncertainty for a very long time. I've lived with sarcoidosis for 20 years. I've lived through heart failure, lung damage, procedures, medications, frightening scans, hospital rooms, and conversations that changed the shape of my future. I've had doctors explain what might happen, what could happen, and what they hoped wouldn't happen. I've also had ordinary Tuesdays. I've cooked dinner, I've complained about traffic, I've misplaced my glasses while they were sitting directly in front of me. I've laughed with my wife, I've watched television, I've planned things months ahead, even when part of me knew that chronic illness doesn't respect a calendar. My life has contained serious medical danger and very boring laundry. Both are real. Somewhere during those 20 years, death stopped feeling like a monster hiding in the room. I need to say this carefully. I'm not ready to die. I'm not asking to die. I'm not casually waving away the value of my own life. I want more years. I want more mornings. I want more conversations with my wife. I want more writing, more meals, more music, more ridiculous things to complain about, and more chances to discover that I was confidently wrong about something. I want to be here. But wanting to live isn't the same as living in terror of death. Those two things can exist separately. For a long time, I thought fear was part of staying alive. I thought that if I stopped being frightened, I might become careless, resigned, or detached from my own survival. That hasn't happened. I take my health seriously. I pay attention to symptoms. I see my doctors. I ask questions. I take the medications I've agreed to take, even when the list feels long enough to require its own filing cabinet. I think about risks because my risks are real. But I don't spend every waking hour imagining my final hour. I can't live well that way. What frightens me more than death itself is unnecessary suffering. Pain that can't be controlled. Breathlessness that becomes unbearable. Losing the ability to communicate what I need. Watching the people I love feel helpless while I'm hurting. Those fears are specific. They have shape and weight. They're different from a vague terror of no longer existing. I'm also afraid of leaving the people I love too soon. There will never be a time when I can look at my wife and think, yes, we've had precisely enough years together. There's no correct number. Love doesn't reach a point where it checks a box and declares the account complete. There will always be another conversation I'd want to have. Another ordinary evening. Another meal. Another chance to say, "Did you move this?" before finding out that I moved it myself. Wanting those moments doesn't make me afraid of death. It makes me attached to life. There's a difference. Years ago, during a conversation about illness and survival, someone said to me, "Not everyone comes out the other side." The sentence stung. It felt blunt and cold. I didn't need anyone reminding me that people die. My medical records had already made that point quite efficiently. At the time, I heard the sentence as a warning. You might not survive. You might not be one of the lucky ones. Don't get too comfortable. Now I hear something different in it. Not everyone comes out the other side in the way we usually mean it. Not everyone recovers. Not everyone returns home. Not everyone receives another year. For those of us left behind, that loss can feel like a tear through the center of life. We experience the empty chair, the unanswered phone, the familiar object no one has moved. We're the ones who keep reaching towards someone who isn't there. Death becomes tragedy through the love that remains. But I can't automatically assume that the person who dies experiences death as the same kind of terror. I don't claim to know what happens after death. I have beliefs, questions, hopes, and intuitions, but I don't have proof. I don't think anyone should be bullied into certainty about something none of us can describe from experience and return to verify. Belief is personal. So is doubt. I can respect both. What I've come to believe for myself is that death may not always be a terrifying cliff. It may be quieter than that. It may be the closing of a chapter after the final sentence has already been written. That doesn't mean the chapter was long enough. It doesn't mean the ending was fair. It doesn't erase pain, grief, anger, or everything the person still wanted. It only means I no longer picture death standing over me with its teeth showing. When I was first seriously ill, I spent a lot of time mentally rehearsing disaster. Every unfamiliar sensation became evidence. A flutter in my chest, a sharp pain, a sudden wave of fatigue, a breath that didn't feel deep enough. My mind would take one physical sensation and build an entire ending around it before I'd even had time to sit down. Sometimes caution was appropriate. My body has given me symptoms that required urgent care. I've learned not to dismiss everything as anxiety, but constant vigilance has a cost. When every moment becomes preparation for catastrophe, life begins to feel like a waiting room. You sit there listening for your name, unable to concentrate on anything else. I don't want to spend whatever time I have left sitting in that waiting room. I'd rather inhabit the day I'm actually in. That sounds simple until you've received a serious diagnosis. A diagnosis can pull time apart. The past becomes the period before you knew. The future becomes a frightening series of possibilities. The present gets squeezed between the two until there's hardly room to breathe. That newly diagnosed listener may have been standing in exactly that narrow space. The life before the word neurosarcoidosis, the imagined future after it, and one frightened person trying to remain present while the mind runs in every direction. I understand that. I can't promise anyone an easy medical outcome. My own life has been shaped by complications I never expected. Some problems improved, some stayed, some changed into different problems with longer names. What I can say is that a diagnosis doesn't instantly tell you the full story of your life. It gives you information. Sometimes frightening information. Sometimes incomplete information. It may change your plans, your routines, your treatment, and the way you experience your own body. But on the day you hear the diagnosis, you still don't know every page that comes after it. I certainly didn't. 20 years ago, I couldn't have pictured myself sitting here, creating a podcast, hearing from someone with neurosarcoidosis, and discovering that my voice had helped them feel less alone. I didn't know this moment was waiting for me. That's one reason I resist mentally moving straight from diagnosis to death. There's too much unknown territory between those 2 points. Some of it may be difficult. Some may be painfully unfair. Some may contain an ordinary afternoon that becomes precious only because you're there to experience it. I don't wake up every morning overflowing with gratitude. Some mornings I'm tired. Some mornings my body feels heavy before I've even stood up. Some mornings, I'm irritated that managing my health requires so much attention. I don't turn every difficult symptom into a spiritual message. Sometimes a bad day is simply a bad day, and I'd prefer a refund. Acceptance hasn't made me cheerful about being ill. It has made me less willing to give fear more time than it deserves. Fear can alert me. It can tell me to call a doctor. It can make me notice a change that needs attention. But fear doesn't get to become the permanent voice in charge of the household. It can speak. It can't have every room. For anyone newly diagnosed, fear may be present whether you invite it or not. You don't have to feel ashamed of that. You don't have to become calm immediately. You don't have to produce a courageous speech while you're still trying to pronounce the name of your condition. You can be frightened. You can be angry. You can ask the same question more than once because you didn't absorb the answer the first time. You can take a notebook to appointments and still forget half of what was said. You can need another person beside you. You can leave the doctor's office, sit in your car, and stare at the steering wheel for a while. None of that means fear will always feel this large. My relationship with mortality changed gradually. There wasn't one dazzling revelation. I didn't wake up fearless. I simply became tired of dying in my imagination while I was still alive in my body. I began paying closer attention to what was physically in front of me. My wife's voice from another room. A cup cooling beside me because I forgot to drink it. The weight of the phone in my hand. A message from a stranger telling me that hearing me speak made the day feel less frightening. Those details don't solve mortality. They return me to my life. None of us receives a guaranteed number of years. Illness makes that fact harder to ignore. But illness didn't invent it. People without serious diagnoses also live inside uncertainty. They may simply have the luxury of forgetting. I don't have that luxury. I'm not sure I'd want it back. Awareness of mortality can be painful, but it also helps me recognize when fear is stealing time before anything has actually happened. I can worry about how my story ends, or I can notice that it hasn't ended yet. The screen was still glowing in my hand when I finished reading that listener's message. I couldn't remove the uncertainty from their diagnosis. I couldn't reach through the screen and tell them exactly what their future would hold. But for a few minutes, my voice made the room feel less frightening. And on that day, in that chapter, I was still here to use it. The day I realized that my fear was not of death itself was the day I learned to live. That doesn't make me afraid of death. It makes me attached to life. Fear of death shrinks everything into an ending you can't control. It pulls the future into a single point and turns the present into a warning. Attachment to life does the opposite. It brings you back to what is here now. The sound of someone you love moving through the house, a day unfolding as it will, laughter that arrives without permission, and the simple fact that you are still here to experience it. Fear tries to compress the story into its final page. Attachment keeps opening the book. I can hold both truths, that my life is finite and that it is still unfolding. But I don't want fear to narrate it anymore. I don't just want to avoid death. I want to keep meeting my life while I can. And that is enough reason to stay here fully for as long as I am here. I'm Tate. Thanks for sharing this time with me. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep breathing, and remember, sarcoidosis is only rare until you're the one living with it.
He's got doctors and blood work and pills by the stack. And it seems like appointments are back to back. But he'll laugh when he can, and he'll say what he feels, because chronic illness is strange.